Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're doing well. Okay, let's do a recap of week 14 of the marathon train so far. Week 14 took place from the 14th to the 20th of August, and it's also the third week of the 4-week race preparation train block. Monday was a rest day. It was also the day after the City to Surf. Fortunately, I wasn't feeling too sore, but I think some allergies started kicking up again. I did some walking and also plenty of like foam rolling and stretching and self-massage throughout the evening as well. So Tuesday was some intervals. It was 5 by 600 meters at 5k race pace with about 9 seconds of jog recovery in between. I did it at City Park along the Riverwalk near Newington. Did like a 6k warm-up to the place and then did the intervals and then like a 4k cool down as well. Also added in some strides in the warm-up. I felt quite strong for this intervals for some reason, even though like City to Surf was like what, 2 days before. So Wednesday was a 23k medium long run. Decided to do it at Lake Getawana at Georges Hall and Lansdowne. It's been a while since I ran there, and it's kind of like a nice break on doing the City Park route all the time. Although if I had to be honest, I don't really enjoy running to Lake Getawana because yeah, there's too much traffic and like a lot of roads to cross. Yeah, so like in total this whole run I think I stopped for like around 10 minutes in total, just to like wait for traffic and stuff. But other than that, it's a quite nice route. It's also a good way to like get some hills in as well, because Lake Getawana is quite hilly at some points. So Thursday was 10k recovery with some speed work at the end, and those were like a bit of strides. I did the recovery part at Saltpan Creek. The boardwalks were a bit slippery because like, you know, it's always like that in the morning these days. And then I finished the strides off at Roos Park, and that went fairly well as well. Friday was 8k recovery. I was feeling a bit weak this morning because I think I had bad sleep the night before. I would have preferred to do it on grass, but yeah, it was like raining a fair bit the night before, so the grass is all wet. So I just decided to do it at Roos Park instead, just do some laps around there. Felt quite sluggish for some reason, felt very weak. Yeah, wasn't really a great recovery run to be honest. And then Saturday was supposed to be a tune-up race. It was supposed to be like anywhere between like 8 to 15 kilometers, but I couldn't find any races with that distance on that day, so yeah, decided to just do it on Rose Park Run instead, which is like around 5k's. Mark also offered me his Vaporfly 2s to race in, I guess, so like yeah, that was great as well. I was running kind of late that morning, so I was kind of like rushing to the park run with like 2 minutes to go before the race starts. Didn't get any time to do some drills or like, you know, dynamic warm-ups or even like strides. Yeah, for that race the plan was to go like anywhere under 18 minutes I think, and I was also wearing the Vaporfly 2s for the first time ever in a race. I felt pretty decent and relaxed for the first kilometer, and then my feet started to get quite uncomfortable very quickly after that. There's almost like no room in the toe box area, so it's quite snug as well, which is not bad for like a race kind of fit I guess, but I know it's quite uncomfortable when I'm trying to go fast as well. It's not like I was getting hot spots or blisters or anything, it's more like I was feeling like my feet were getting squeezed inside the shoe gradually throughout the race I guess, and that's pretty uncomfortable. After the first kilometer I couldn't stop thinking about how uncomfortable my feet were. Like it just wasn't pleasant I guess, and at the same time I am borrowing Mark's shoes, so I didn't want to like scuff it up or like damage or like go hard on it. So yeah, I was trying to run very lightly and carefully as well, so yeah, it was kind of awkward to like run a bit carefully, but then it was also painful as well. So yeah, it was very awkward to run in I guess. Big shout out to Aaron, the guy who finished in front of me. I kind of stuck to him like pretty much throughout the whole race. Without him being there, like I feel like I would have just like lost focus and dozed off even more. I think if I had known to tag along, like it'd be a much tougher race, and I was just trying to get my mind off the uncomfortable feeling on my feet I guess. Yeah, so pretty much I ended up finishing like around 17:30, which is like a massive PB. I think my old PB was like around 17:56 in my Endorphin Speed 3s, which is like probably like a month or two back. If I had to compare the Vaporfly 2s to my Endorphin Speed 3, the Vaporflies are more nimble and like more snappy I guess. I feel like I can go pretty fast in the speeds, but because the base is so wide and stable, it feels a bit clunky as well compared to the Vaporflies, which is like kind of like a narrow, like streamlined kind of fit. However, in terms of comfort and fit, I'd still prefer the speeds because yeah, it's just way better than the Vaporflies in my opinion. But I feel like if I wore like a larger size Vaporfly, I feel like it wouldn't be that bad. Even with the discomfort I was feeling with the Vaporflies, I still somehow managed to like hang on, like hold the pace fairly well I guess. So yeah, props to the Vaporflies I guess. Again, many thanks to Mark for lending me your Vaporflies. Yeah, it was a very cool experience and it felt very fast I guess. Later in the evening I was doing some core workouts, and then I can't like sneeze or something because of allergies, and then I can't like strain my lower back a bit unfortunately. Yeah, nothing too serious. It's a bit like the pain you get when you kind of like smash your tailbone a bit, but not as serious, nowhere near as serious I guess. But yeah, it's just not very comfortable, and like yeah, it's kind of strained now, so yeah, that kind of sucks. So Sunday was a 27k long run. I started off at Marrickville, went all the way to City Park via the Cooks River Suckway and also cutting through Homebush. Yeah, pretty much my normal long run route I guess. I was still feeling kind of stiff and sore from, you know, kind of like straining my lower back. Fortunately, it didn't affect my running much or at all. It was kind of cold in the morning, so I felt a bit rusty at the start, but yeah, I found my rhythm not too long after. I run at City Park a fair bit and do like a lot of my long runs there, but like I don't really go through Newington Army that much. It's quite nice. It's like, it's pretty scenic too. It's like a massive field, and like it's pretty spacious. There's like a lot of space for like biking. You can also do like disc golfing there as well. But yeah, for whatever reason, whenever I'm there, I feel like I'm in a farm or something, or like a massive field, and I just want to relax and like chill there and take it easy. So once I got there, I kind of just dozed off and daydreamed a bit, and yeah, it just kind of got lost a few times as well. I was trying to do that big loop around, and I think I went the wrong direction like twice or something. But yeah, ended up finishing a long run in one piece. The low back wasn't that bad anyway, so yeah. That brings the total mileage for this week to like around 90 kilometers. I think I was supposed to do like around 96 to 103 kilometers, but it's fine. I think it's probably because the tune-up race was a bit shorter than it should be, and yeah, probably missing a proper warm-up and cool down. Overall, pretty decent week, except for the low back strain, I guess. Next week will be the final week of my race preparation training block before I start the 3-week taper. There won't be a tune-up race next week, but there should be one in 2 weeks. I'll probably do like a 10k for that, I guess. And it'll also be my final tune-up race for this whole training program. I also want to quickly go through the types of running workouts I do for this marathon training program and like give you guys a bit more like context and detail so that these recaps make more sense, I guess. Yeah, so firstly, this is all in the context of the marathon training program in the Advanced Marathoning book. I'm pretty much going to summarize the workouts as written in the book and also add in a bit of my opinions and experiences with it as well. The other thing is these prescribed running workouts also target a specific pace in like a heart rate range. And the thing is, those kind of metrics aren't really accurately measured. I think most of us run with like a sport watch, a fitness tracker, or like a smart watch or whatever, and oftentimes they'll come with like a built-in HR sensor and also like GPS to help you track like your heart rate, your pace, and also like your distance traveled and so on. But I think these devices aren't super accurate by any means. For example, when it comes to the heart rate sensor, these watches are like a wrist-based and like they're not really accurate as like if you get the chest strap ones, and oftentimes your heart rate data can be thrown off or like made it inaccurate if you have a lot of like body hair or like tattoos or like sweat or water gets in the way, or if you have a cadence lock as well. And then when it comes to GPS, it's fairly accurate if you're in like a open field and you have like a strong GPS signal and you're going in a straight line or something. But the moment you go under trees or like you're under tall buildings or like a lot of clouds or something, or like going under a tunnel, yeah, the GPS is gonna be thrown off and your pace and distance traveled is gonna be like all over the place as well. So the running watch is a great tool to help you like gauge your efforts and also like how you're going throughout your workout. But like, yeah, keep in mind it can be inaccurate sometimes, and yeah, just try and get a feel of your running efforts mentally and physically as well. Anyways, let's go through the type of runs I do, I guess. So the first one is probably long runs. So this is any run that's like pretty much 26k's or longer, and the goal is to improve like aerobic endurance and fitness. Long runs aren't like slow jogs by any means. You're supposed to do them like around 10 to 20% slower than your goal marathon pace. You start off slow, like around 20% slower than your goal marathon pace, and then you gradually pick up the pace so that the last 8 to 16 kilometers of the run is about like 10% slower than your goal marathon pace. So for example, if my goal marathon time is like around 2 hours 50 minutes, that's about 4 minutes and 2 seconds per kilometer, which means my long run should start like around 4 minutes and 50 seconds per kilometer, and then gradually increase to like around 4 minutes and 26 seconds per kilometer throughout the run. I guess the idea is you want to get used to like starting off pretty comfortably and then slowly pick up the pace, and that provides like some kind of psychological like reinforcement so that when you're actually doing the marathon race itself and you do the same thing, you pretty much know you pace yourself well and finish strong, I guess. And you're supposed to do these long runs like around 75 to 84% maximum heart rate. I never really measured my max heart rate, so I don't really know it for sure. Most of my long runs are usually done like around 150 to 165 beats per minute on average, which could be high or low, but yeah, it seems to work for me, I guess. And also if there's like a hard workout, like an interval session or like a tune-up race the day before, then the long run that comes after should be done a bit easier. Like you start off like way easier, like probably like a recovery pace even, and then like pick up even slower. Pretty much the whole run should be a bit easier than normal if you had like a hard day before. And you're supposed to do these long runs with a similar hill profile to your actual marathon race. I know the Sydney Marathon is slightly hilly, but I usually do my long runs around like Cooks River Cycleway, Sydenham Park, and like Parramatta Valley Cycleway, and those routes aren't too hilly, but they're quite uninterrupted, which is pretty important to me, I guess. Long runs aren't too frequent in this marathon training program. It's usually like once a fortnight, and sometimes there'll be like a marathon pace effort in between these long runs as well. And in terms of recovery, I find that it doesn't take too long to recover from, but the long ones that have marathon pace efforts in between definitely take a while to recover from, like a few days at least. And then we have medium long runs. Those are like pretty much like long runs, except it's like around 18 to 24 kilometers. And the goal of medium long runs is pretty much to reinforce the physiological benefits from the long runs. I feel like there's always at least one medium long run throughout each week of the marathon training program, and I feel like sometimes you have to do 2 of them and then top off like a long run on a Sunday. So yeah, it is quite frequent as well. Okay, so heart rate wise, it's meant to be the same as long run, but I think for me it's a bit lower. It's like around 145 to 155 beats per minute on average. I feel like my heart rate is a bit less than my long runs because yeah, it's not as far, I guess. I still do it pretty much at the same pace. I think medium long runs are pretty important in this marathon training because of how frequent it appears in training. I feel like you end up having to learn how to like do it well enough and also get through them and also like recover from them as well. And if you can do that, I guess you get some pretty decent aerobic and endurance adaptations. And also to put it in perspective, before I started this whole marathon training program, I used to only do like a long one like once every like fortnight or so, and that was like around 20k's, and I always felt like a massive slow run of some sort. And now with this marathon training program, with all these like medium long runs every week, it feels like a kind of fast steady run now rather than like a long run, if that makes sense. Like the 18 to 24k distance has become like a moderate run for me now. And in terms of recovery, I feel like when you first start doing it, it feels kind of tough, but by the middle and towards the end of the marathon training program, you'll find it's pretty easy to recover from, I guess. Then we have marathon pace runs. These are pretty much the same as long runs, but you start off at the long run pace and then you eventually go to like your goal marathon pace. There's only a handful of marathon pace runs in this whole train program. There's like around 4, I think. There's like 13, 16, 19 and 23 kilometer marathon pace runs. Pretty much the same physiological benefits as the long run, except with these marathon pace runs, you get to practice your pace, your form, your running gear, and also like your hydration, for example. Pretty much the same thing as you would for like your actual marathon race, I guess. I think my goal marathon pace is like around 4 minutes and 2 seconds, but I think I've been doing it at around like 4 to 4:10 minutes per kilometer. Sometimes it goes a bit fast, like 3:55 to 4, I guess, but like yeah, it's not always consistent, I guess. And then the marathon pace effort is supposed to be like around 82 to 88% of your maximum heart rate. My heart rate has been like around 160 to 175 beats per minute for the most part. I think that's a bit higher than I'd be comfortable with for the actual race, but I'm hoping the table will get me a bit more relaxed before the actual race. And in terms of recovery, although you're not really going super fast at these marathon pace efforts, it's kind of tough too, so yeah, it takes like a few days to recover from. Then I have my general aerobic runs. These are pretty much moderate pace runs up to like 16 kilometers with the aim of enhancing your overall aerobic conditioning by increasing like training volume. The idea is that high training volume improves endurance, I guess. These are also slower and shorter than the long runs and like the medium long runs, but they are faster than the recovery runs. And you're supposed to do them at around 72 to 81% maximum heart rate, which is quite close to your long run or like medium long run kind of pace as well. I think for me, most of my general aerobic runs I've done around 135 to 150 beats per minute, which is a bit less than my medium long runs as well. I usually run this anywhere between like 450 to like 530 minute per kilometer pace. I think I should be running them a bit fast, like around 4:40 to 5 minutes per kilometer, but I've been taking these general aerobic runs quite chill for this marathon training, I guess. There's usually a general aerobic run like once a week early on in the training program, I guess, to add more volume, but much less of it later on. I tend to do my general aerobic runs at Salt Pan Creek. There's like a mix of like footpaths, boardwalks and trails there, so yeah, it's a nice break from like Sydney Park all the time, I guess. And then we have lactate threshold runs. These are like tempo runs where you go like around 6 to 11 kilometers at your lactate threshold pace, which is like sort of max effort you can do for like 1 hour. I guess the idea of these lactate threshold runs is to help build endurance at a somewhat high aerobic intensity near the upper limit of your aerobic system, where you're still running pretty efficient oxygen, but not beyond where you start going like super anaerobic and like you start building lactic acid and like your pace and like and your energy starts dropping heaps and like your heart goes up a lot as well. The lactate threshold pace is pretty fast, but not too fast, and like slightly uncomfortable. It's like a slightly held back fast, I guess. There's also psychological benefits you gain from doing these lactate threshold runs as well. It takes a fair bit of concentration and like focus to actually maintain your lactate threshold pace. So yeah, I think that builds like mental toughness, especially for racing. It's supposed to be done like around 82 to 91% of your maximum heart rate. I think for me that's like around 165 to 175 beats per minute. It's definitely faster than your goal marathon pace, but slower than your 10k race pace, like around 10 seconds per minute per kilometer slower. My 10k race pace is between like 3:30 to 3:36 minutes per kilometer. My lactate threshold pace is like around 3:44 to 3:50 minutes per kilometer. For these lactate threshold runs, you normally do like around a 3 to 5k warm up, and then you do the actual lactate threshold effort itself, and then you do like a 10 to 15 minute cool down, which is like around 2 to 3 kilometers, I guess. It's never really specified in the book, but I think you're supposed to do them continuously as well. I know sometimes you can do like 2 by 50 minutes threshold pace or like 4 by 5 minutes or something, but like yeah, I think in this context of the marathon train, you just do it all at once. I usually do my lactate threshold runs at Rhodes Parkrun course. It's quite flat and fast, so yeah, and I usually know the exact distances I've got to cover as well. And then we have recovery runs. These are like 6 to 10k's at a relatively relaxed pace to help enhance like recovery for your next hard workouts. I feel like there's always like at least 2 per week. Sometimes the program also calls for like recovery doubles as well, so that's like 16k's in total, where you do like 10k's in the morning and 6k's in the evening. It's supposed to be done below 76% of your max heart rate. I think for me that's like around 125 to 140 beats per minute. Most of my recovery runs like that, but I feel like I have seen some recovery runs where I've done like around 150 beats per minute, and that's usually a good indication that my recovery is like not going that well. And then for me, my recovery pace is anywhere between like 5:30 to 6 minutes a kilometer, sometimes even like faster, sometimes a bit slower as well. It's also not a bad idea to have like flat routes for recovery and also like soft surfaces like grass as well. And if you're doing hills, and also like slow down a bit as well. I prefer to do my recovery runs locally, and it's usually like on grass, like at the Bankstown City Sports Complex or like Roos Park, and also Salt Pan Creek for like a bit of trails as well. Then we have like VO2 max intervals. These are intervals ranging from 600 to 1600 meters. So for example, like 5 by 600, 6 by 800, you know, 6 by 1k, those kind of intervals, I guess. The idea is to like improve aerobic capacity and like your VO2 max as well. It usually starts off with like a 5k warm up, and then like you do the intervals, then like a 3k cool down or something. And then in between each interval rep, you do like recovery jog, which is like about 50 to 9% of your interval duration. So that means like if I was to do like a 1k interval in like around 3 minutes 30, then my recovery jog interval should be anywhere between like 1 minute 45 to like 3 minutes 10. In that scenario, I tend to stick to like around the middle areas, like around 2 minutes 30. Or sometimes a bit less, sometimes a bit more, depending on how I feel. But at the same time, intervals aren't that important for marathon trains, so yeah, sometimes you don't need to push it that hard, I guess. I like to do my intervals at the Riverwalk at Sydney Park near Newington. It's quite nice and spacious there. It's quite wide and it's all flat, I guess. But there's often winds from all directions, so it's quite tough sometimes. Intervals definitely put a lot of stress on your body, so yeah, it takes quite a while to recover from as well. And then we have speed training, which involves like strides, for example, like 10 by 100 meters, and then hill sprints, for example, 6 by like 10 seconds of hills. And the idea of speed training is to help you maintain like a high rate of like turnover with your legs while you're racing. It's usually done at the end of like recovery or general aerobic runs, and sometimes I'll add in like strides in the warm-up before like fast workouts like intervals, lactate threshold, like tune-up races. A stride is pretty much like 100 meters of running where you accelerate to top speed for the first 70 meters and then you kind of hold that for the last 30 meters. You pretty much stay relaxed and fast for the whole way. Make sure your fists aren't clenched up and make sure like your shoulders are relaxed and down. Keep your arms relaxed and so on. You pretty much go fast with quick leg turn-up and like powerful acceleration basically. And then you jog or walk for like 100 to 200 meters before you go into the next stride. And then there's hill sprints where you run like 10 to 12 seconds up like moderately steep hill. Not too steep, I'm guessing like around 3 to 5% incline. Then you walk, jog back to the start, then repeat. And on the topic of speed work, it's not too much of it in the marathon training program because I did build endurance, lactate threshold, and VO2 max in that order. And pretty much the long runs and the tempo runs have the most relevance to your performance for the actual marathon race. And then finally we have like tune-up races. These are supposed to be 8 to 15 kilometer races that appear like around 3 times in the whole marathon training program. At least for the 18-week 70-mile one, I guess. So tune-up races provide feedback on your fitness, lets you practice your pre-race routine, such as like your pre-race meal and also like your warm-up, and also build mental toughness while reducing like the anxiety and uncertainty from like not racing at all leading up to the marathon. You're supposed to go all out for these races and like oftentimes on like tired legs as well, since you like train so much throughout the week. And these tune-up races can also be a confidence booster or like a way to like assess your fitness level and adjust your marathon goal and training if necessary. For me, I can't really find these 8 to 15k races, so I just usually go for like 10k ones, I guess, except for like the one I did at Rhodes Parkland, which is like around 5k. But yeah, that's pretty much the different types of running workouts I do for this whole marathon training program based on the advanced marathoning book. Hopefully it provides a bit more insight and context into my training, and like hopefully it's like been helpful for you guys in some way. That's pretty much all I have to say for now. Thanks for watching and have a nice day. Bye.